Matt, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. I greatly appreciate it. From the time I got to meet you in person not too long ago at the Brews and Boards event for the Players Philanthropy Fund up there in Baltimore, I've been following everything what you've been doing in that cornhole tournament up there. Were you surprised how competitive these guys get, even in cornhole? I mean, it's amazing.
Absolutely not. You know, it's funny. When you're an athlete, you're competitive in everything you do almost. I mean, it's kind of crazy. But cornhole is one of those things where they've taken a personal interest in, because inside of a lot of the locker rooms in the NFL, including the Ravens, they have a cornhole board. They have them in their locker room, and they compete with one another in between meetings and practices. It's so much fun. So they've actually gotten pretty good at it. And that was kind of the vision behind it. My team and I thought about it, and we said, well, why don't we do something that everybody can do? It doesn't matter, you know, if you're a golfer or a basketball player, or whatever you are, a runner, or if you're nothing. If you don't do anything, you can still play cornhole, most of them. So that's why we did it. It's very inclusive. It's fun. It's competitive. And it's for a great cause. It's that the Players Philanthropy Fund is something that I founded along with my partner, Seth McDonald and Emil Kalina. And it was to create a safe platform for professional athletes and for celebrities to connect to, so that they don't have to have their own private foundation and all the legal responsibilities. They just plug into the Players Philanthropy Fund, and we all do all the back office for them. It's really a cool model called a fiscal sponsorship model.
Yeah, so explain that a little bit more, because I've had John Brinkus and Rob Vaca as guests on the podcast as well, and they've talked about it to a certain degree. But you know, just me from an outsider looking at it, and now that you've been involved in and starting this, explain exactly what you mean by this, like a safe place for these athletes or celebrities to go to start something.
Well, thanks, Riz. I mean, when you look at it, the vision that I had was that I operated my own private foundation. Believe it or not, that is a legal entity that you are personally responsible for, because you're signing for all the documents, and therefore there's tax returns, there's bookkeeping, there's checks, there's vetting of the charities and people whom you're trying to sponsor or have a program for. There's receipts. There's all this back office stuff that if you lose track of, you can find yourself trying to do good, finding yourself in hot water. So I saw that there was this platform called a donor advised fund, a DAF in short, abbreviation, donor advised fund. It is a charity. It is a foundation that people can gift into and get a tax-deductible donation, but then have control over it where those funds are distributed, as long as it's going to another 501c3, to another charitable cause that's been registered. The issue with that is that it's very inflexible. So within our donor-advised fund, because that's exactly what the Players Philanthropy Fund is, it's a donor-advised fund. People can put their funds into and then get a tax deduction. But we added two more layers to it. We added what we call a fiscal sponsorship agreement. There is a contract between me and an individual. It's usually a corporation. That corporation does business as inside of the Players Philanthropy Fund, and they have their own 501c3 status, but in our nonprofit umbrella. So they don't have the legal responsibilities, but they function as if they do have their own foundation, so they can go out and do an event to raise money. Those funds are brought in a compliant way. Then they can run programs, pay for programs with those proceeds. They can gift their own funds and get a tax deduction. They can go raise funds, get grants. And then we can come alongside of them and pay the hard costs in order to have those programs for buses, food, rental, for plane flights, for wounded warriors, whatever it is. We come alongside of them and act as their agents, and so they can then, in return, do all their charitable work. So it's a big thing, but it's a small thing because we simplify their world.
Yeah, and so it's a turnkey operation for these guys that you have this template.
It can be up in less than a week. Yeah, less than a week, Rick. It can really just come to it. They can sign up, and we can have them up and running in a nonprofit sense with their own brand. It's white labeled, whatever they choose to be. Whether it's Dwayne Wade or Ed Reed or Ray Lewis, they can name it whatever they want, and then they're just doing business as inside of our own platform. So it's really a turnkey type of platform, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So how did you come up with this, though? I mean, I think it's such a novel concept, but it seems to make perfect sense.
Well, after you understand it, like I explained it, you go, oh, man, that'd be easy. In fact, there's a lot of nonprofits that say, gosh, could I use a fiscal sponsor? I'd hate to I'm getting tired of having to do all the bookkeeping and all the
Yes.
tax returns and all. So they say a lot of them come in, they actually roll out of theirs, shut it down, and then they just create an account inside of ours and operate as if they've never changed. So how I came up with it is operating my own private foundation. I had a lot of help from my financial advisors, from my tax attorney, from those type of people. So it was pretty easy to run, but most people don't have that ability. My wife and I also didn't go out and raise funds. We just gave our own funds through it. Or we would go get a grant from the NFL or somebody and then give the money away. It was pretty easy. But running events and doing hard cost expenses becomes very difficult to do, and you have to make sure you do it right. So I decided with my partners to start a donor advised fund to facilitate that piece of it, the back office. But what we discovered was that most athletes don't want to give their own money, believe it or not. Most celebrities don't want to give their own money.
I think that's all of Americans.
Yeah, but they do want to use their platform, their status in our society to raise funds and better their community with that. So we come alongside of them, whether they have an event planner that's running an event with them, a marketing person, an agent. We come alongside of them, and we make sure that everything they do is compliant, is legal, is paid for in the proper way. They're running according to best practices, which the IRS loves the fact that, what may be legal may not be ethical in the nonprofit world. So if you're having a great big party, you raise $100,000, but it costs you $95,000 to have the party, and you're only giving $5,000 of it away, that's legal but unethical. Right?
Of course.
It's just not something you should do. So we come alongside the athlete or the celebrity, and we make sure that they are at least giving 50% plus. And we hope for upwards of 80% of the proceeds are going towards their cause, whether it's through program or grants. So this is something that I'm very passionate about, as you can hear.
Yes.
We have a great process inside of our walls. We're scaling. We have over 70 clients, I would say accounts to the legal term. And then from there, we are really facilitating thousands and thousands of dollars weekly going to the causes or programs for these different accounts that have funds within inside of the Players Philanthropy Fund.
And so why did you start your own private foundation?
It was a way for me to connect with the community. They needed to see that Matt Stover was more than just about football. I knew I had a social responsibility. I was a role model in our community. No better way to do that than through charitable works. Debbie and my wife and I had a very much of a passion for the Christian community here in Baltimore and throughout the country. We wanted to support that. And then through that, I was able to help lots of youth groups, the Catholic Charities, to KC Cares, the Living Classroom, and on and on, all our community helping our youth and then our church community. So that was the reason why we actually gifted our own funds into the private foundation and then gifted it from there, and then got the tax deduction for it. So it was a way for me to do it. I also understood my wife and I were blessed enough with some investments that did very well, and we utilized the donor advised fund in order to transfer some of the assets of those companies prior to the sale, so I didn't have to pay taxes on it, and gave away more money because of it. That's a whole nother tax strategy that a lot of people use. So, and you're giving away money, and I really think that is a social responsibility for the wealthy. And I was blessed enough to be considered that, to take their own private funds and to better our communities from it. I'm a firm believer that it's up to the community and not to the government to do that. And I really feel like I try to be an example for that for our communities. And with that, if everybody did that through our communities, then I believe this country wouldn't have near the problems that it has today.
Yeah, and that's probably a whole nother podcast we could talk about, because I'm in
Yes,
agreement with you.
Yes, it is. We're getting political with that statement,
Yes.
I know, but
Yes.
but it's true.
But it is very true.
But with an amoral society and people without good morals, and I believe any morality precedes any great education. If you don't have that in your community, then it's not going to happen until that takes over. So, but that's why I'm leading with me and with my family.
Well,
we're going to make sure that we're examples of that.
Yes, you're the starting point. And so before all of that could happen, in terms of you being this role model and having a platform in your community, There was Matt growing up as a kid in Dallas, Texas, getting into sports. So how did that happen, and what did that look like?
Well, growing up, I had a middle-class upbringing. My father and mother were together. They provided. It was done in a way that they loved me. They provided for me. That it was pretty cool when I looked at my opportunities, because I was blessed enough to have a good high school, good teachers. I was never, quote, abused. So my upbringing I would consider as privileged, but I respected it, I honored it, and I worked. I worked very hard. Nobody ever told me to go to school. Nobody ever told me to study. Nobody ever told me to go work out, to go kick. Nobody's telling me to get up in the morning back in the day, and nor are they now. And I think that's critical. We all are called to we've all been given talents, treasures, time. We've all been given gifts, and I really believe that it is my responsibility to make sure I'm using those to the best of my ability. So that's what happened when I was a kid.
Yeah, so how did that happen, though? I mean, where did that come from, this motivation that you would get up each morning, you would go practice when you probably didn't want to? Where did that come from? Was that from your upbringing or DNA or a combination?
I think it was the being and understanding right and wrong. Knowing that I am responsible for my own actions and my own choices, and whatever it is, whether I love or I don't love, whether I am a good citizen or not. And in order to do that, and I think we all know right and wrong. Whenever I go speak, I say everybody understands what right and wrong is. Now, looking back, what regrets will you have? Will you have the pain of regret? Well, we all have regrets, but do we have the pain of regret? And so I never wanted to look back and say, golly, why didn't I do that? I should have done this. Or, man, I really could have done this. I never wanted to look back and say that. Now, are there points and times when, I messed up, or, I wasn't behaving properly, or we're all fallen. We're all, what I consider sinners, right? We're all flawed. But I just, in that aspect, I never wanted to look back without regret. So, and then the intrinsic value that God has placed on me, that I have a God that loves me. I have a God that wants to be personally intimate with me. I have a God that gives me everything that I have, including the breath I breathe and the food that I eat, and that He wants to bless me. Jeremiah 29:11. He doesn't want to bring me harm. And I trust that. It doesn't mean that there won't be hardship, but it's not His fault. It's mankind's fault. And so I know that happens. I've lost my mother, and, I have teenagers. There's pain there too, right? So
yes, I've got teenagers as well.
So, without preaching too much here, I really feel like, that only that vacuum hole in my heart was filled with the Lord. And because of that, I have a cause that's greater than myself.
And do you have any regrets then? What regrets do you have?
Some of my behavior when I was a teenager, my lack of respect for authority when I was really young, before 18, the way I treated young women back in my high school and college days, and I wish I would have known how to love tenderly and with a Christ-like mindset. I just didn't understand that. Life was all about Matt Stover and being selfish and what life could do for me. And to me, I was a nice guy. Everybody, I got along with everybody, but I knew what was in my heart. And so what came out at times was not what I am proud of.
And when did that change then?
When I was 22, my wife and I were married within our first year of our marriage, and she was raised in a church, and she had a great understanding and a relationship with God that, she was surrendered to Jesus as her Lord and Savior when she was 12. And I went to church, and I had a good understanding of who God was, but it was more in a religious way and an honoring way. But on Sundays, I'd go to church, but on, Monday through Saturday, I would, shut the door on Him and do whatever I wanted to do, and then I'd get covered on Sunday again, right? So there's no relationship there. It was strictly just a religion. So when I was 22, I went through some hard times on the field as a professional athlete, and I just got myself in a bunch of hot water with my career, wasn't kicking well. Belichick was my coach. Man, the pressure was on. And I just got broken down after the 91 season. And God was just tenderizing my heart to say, look, dude, you going to let me in here? You going to let me in, or are you just going to keep fighting me? Because right now, the way you're doing it on your own, you're going to be out of this league in no time. And he knew where my passion was. And I really wanted to be, a professional football player. I always thought, why not me? And kicking was the way I could go. And so at that point, I heard the gospel for the first time. For what good is it for a man to gain the whole world but yet forfeit his own soul? But the one who loses it for my sake will gain it and have everlasting life. When I heard that for the first time, I went, oh my gosh, I have the whole world, but I'm miserable. I'm absolutely miserable. I'm empty. This is not what I thought it would be. And I think that's why you see a lot of celebrities and athletes not doing well with their identity. So once I understood that piece and I surrendered, Christ, come into my life, I'm a sinner, I need you, then the purpose and understanding I had wasn't about me, it was about him and about how he could use me to help others and to be a light amongst all the darkness. But there's one thing that happened to me is that in 1992, the following year, I hadn't let go of football. Football was still mine. I kind of look at it like this. My life was his with an open hand facing up, but football, I still had my fist around it, closed fist. And because it was mine, I worked hard. Hey, God, this is I've done this. I'm going to take care of it. Well, that year I herniated a disc in my back and had to kick with it. I don't know if you've ever had back pain.
Yeah, it's no fun.
I tried kicking with it. It's no fun. And, anywhere from Tiger Woods to anybody that's ever had bad back pain, it just affects you greatly. Well, God was basically trying to pry my fingers off of my career. And he did one by one through 13 games of pain. And finally by, 10th game in, I finally just said, God, this is yours. I don't care what happens to football. It's yours. Take it. I'm done. I can't do this. And boom, got through the season. He put me in front of some people that helped me physically. I do think that God can use people to help, his cause, his purpose. So I got strong that off season. The pain went away, and my career took off in 1993. Absolutely took off. So being a Christian doesn't mean you're weak at all just because you surrender. It means that you have power because you alone can't do it. I'm telling you, you can think that you do it, but then at the end of your life, you have, $10-20 billion. Well, okay, so what? It really. But if you've changed people's lives and you've really made this world a better place, but not only just on this earth, but eternally, because that's what really matters is eternity. Because life as we know it is just a puff of smoke according to time itself. I really felt like that cause was there. And, once I surrendered everything, it doesn't mean that I don't have my challenges and my pride, but I try every day to stay accountable and stay submitted to the cause and purpose he's called me to.
That's right. Well, I'm 47 years old, and Matt, I fought him for 37 years of my life. And it's amazing the difference after I did surrender, myself to God as well and develop that relationship. But now, like from a back pain perspective, I understand that, but you're out there kicking and you have a herniated disc, but I have back pain just because I'm unloading the dishwasher the wrong way. So there's a completely different situation.
Yeah.
So when you talk about how all of a sudden your kicking game changed and it just took off, what does that mean and what did that look like then?
Well, did it mean that I didn't have to work? Did it mean I didn't miss field goals? Did it mean that, I didn't have to, grind it? No, of course. That's the labor we've been, cursed with. I mean, we've got to get out there. But it became less stressful, I would say, even though it's stressful, it became where, what am I scared of? Where's my fear? My fear is getting cut. My fear is not being able to, take care of my family. My fear is things that I couldn't control. And so all I did was I said, God, I'm not worried about it. I know you got me. If I go out there and miss every field goal today, you've got a purpose for it. And I've done that. I missed 3 field goals in one game, lost the game. And there was a purpose for it in 2005, first game of the season, Sunday Night Football, 0 for 3, got beat by the Indianapolis Colts. Everybody in the league was watching, and here I am, and I said, all right, God, what was that about? I trust you. I wish that didn't happen. This hurts. I'm embarrassed. I lost the game for my team. I took responsibility for it. But it wasn't 5 minutes before I walked off that field that I had two people, Rex Ryan and Ray Lewis, both come up to me right when we were done, and they looked at me and they said, Stover, you got those out of the way. Now let's move on, because I know it's not going to continue. And then here's Rex Ryan. Well, Stove, you got those out of the way. Let's go. And that meant more to me than anything, because what they were saying is, Matt, we trust you. You had a bad day. Everybody has bad days, right? But we trust that you're going to come out of this and you're going to come out shining. And I had so many people looking at me because I call myself this Christian guy, right? And I run the Bible study, and here I am they had never seen a bad day like that for me ever. And all of a sudden here I am, and they go, all right, Stove, now what are you going to do? Well, they saw me go to work, and they saw me fight, and they saw me struggle, and I missed one field goal for the rest of the season. That's all that happened.
Wow.
One field goal for 15 games. Now, I could not have done that on my own, because I would have been freaking out, right? But because I knew God had a purpose for it, and I had surrendered it, and I knew that my career was in his hands, it wasn't in mine, even though I have to put in the work. He's the one who guides my steps. He's the one who puts my steps in the way, and he gives me those opportunities. It was not about me. It was about him. And when I did that, I'm telling you, the career loosened up. I was able to go out there and not freak out on my next field goal. I made it, and then I made the next one, and then I made the next one. And the only one I missed was a 58-yarder. And it was a tough kick to kick.
Yes, I can imagine 58 just in itself. Now, was that?
Yeah, I didn't have that long of a leg when I was that old, but I tried one anyways with a win, and it just didn't go well. But so that's what I mean about the surrender, and I know as a man of faith, it hasn't always been that way for me. And when I was not walking with him, it was what I thought great, and then hardship came. It's not if it comes, it's when it comes. And if you don't have a foundation to stand on, if you don't know who you are, if you don't have a community around you that loves you no matter what, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. So
what about the times when you had failures as a kicker, missing kicks, before you had this relationship with God? How did you deal with those situations at that point in your career?
I justified them. It was a bad field. It was a bad hold. It was, conditions were bad. It was windy. It was not my fault. That type of thing. Also, standard for kicking back in the 80s and early 90s was 73%. So, you're going to miss some. So you kind of say, well, I'm going to miss some. Just like a baseball batter goes up to the plate. He tries to be 1,000%, but typically he's 300 if he's good. So there's a lot of failures. So dealing with failure is just a part of my DNA. I think that's incredibly important. If you want to know how to be successful, you better know how to deal with failure, number one. So I say that, and you look at every shot that's not taken never hits the bullseye, and I always say to myself, I'm learning from those situations. I learn what not to do, what to do. And it's funny how you always hear, I learn more from my failures than I ever did from my successes. Well, that's because the emotional burn into your brain, into your memory tank is there even more prevalent, because your emotions were so much more affected when that happens.
And so during your whole career, what has motivated you, though? That people telling you can't do something, or what has been the drive behind your success?
Before I was saved, or walking with the Lord, it was, why not me? Right? Why not me? What makes that guy any better than me? I mean, God gave me talent. It looks like I can kick a ball. Why not me? And believe it or not, that carried me. That carried me a lot. Why not me? Why can't God use me? Why after I became Christian, and so it just became something that I owned, something that I made sure that it wasn't my identity. It was something that I did. My identity was in Christ, and I think we all have to be careful because at some point in time, if you're a professional athlete, your career will be over. It's not going to last until you're 75.
Yeah.
I mean, you will be done at a young age. So my identity was before walking with the Lord was all about my kicking career. But after it was all in Him. Therefore, if I didn't have it, I had foundation to stand on. And I think there's where a lot of confusion happens with a lot of the players. I also felt like the NFL was a quick start in life. It wasn't a means to an end financially. I think we have to realize that. It's like hitting the lottery. You get a lot of money at one point, but then you have a whole lot more life to live, and you better budget it right.
Of course. And were there times, though, where, I know this is a job. You have a job. That's your career in the NFL, and it's playing a game, and you can define it however you want to in terms of a game. But were there times where you go into the stadium and you just felt, man, I just don't have it. I don't feel like going to work today?
I felt like I was a mental midget is what I call it, just mental mess. I was just maybe it was the kids or, the family or it was just not good, or I was injured, I was hurt, I should say. I never missed a game, but, maybe I was hurt. And there was a lot of doubt, self-doubt, personal doubt. And I think that we all deal with doubt, and how that doubt creeps in. And there are times, that you're thinking right before a game winner, and anybody that ever tells you this is lying, that they say, I never think, I never get nervous. Shut up. Yes, you do. Because I know that I'm no different than that guy, and I know that there are thoughts that come into your mind. And it is an emotional and mental battle to keep yourself in the right frame of mind. So when you hear about the zone, the players in the zone, what's going on there is you are channeled properly emotionally and mentally to overcome any of the anxieties. And that's what I look at. Every play that you play in as a player, you are anxious. But when nervousness creeps in, that's when you have doubt. So anxiety, your heart rate's going, your breath's up, your blood pressure's up, that's anxiety. But nervousness is when it's like, I don't want the ball. I don't want to kick. And there have been times when I didn't want to kick the ball. Very, very, very few, less than a handful, that I didn't want the ball. It was just something was going on, and but that's one of the critical pieces of who you are as an athlete. If you want to be great, you better want the ball. And that was what I wanted. As a kicker, the only way I could ever have gotten on an NFL field, the only way was to be a place kicker or a punter. I didn't have the physical skills to be a quarterback, a wide receiver, even though I was a wide receiver in high school, a defensive back. I didn't have the body type and have the skills, but I wanted the ball, and I found my little niche by doing that, by kicking a football. So I think that's a critical piece, is overcoming that doubt, overcoming that fear. Is, do you have the DNA to want the ball? If you want it, then you can get it. And I think that goes for anything that you do.
Yeah. And so do you remember specifically those times that you didn't want to make that kick?
Yeah, a game or two. There was I guess there was a playoff game when it was just blowing like crazy in Cleveland. And I was actually in Pittsburgh. And it was and this was early in my career. I had an okay season, and I was just not, kicking great. And the field was bad. It was blowing. And I'm sitting there going, man, I hope I don't get the kick. And if you ever think that, right, most likely you're going to get the kick.
Yes.
And you're going to miss. So every game that I played in, and this is not, I would say, I struggled at times maintaining it, but I always entered the game thinking that I was going to get the game-winning field goal. You never enter the game thinking that you are not. Because if you do prepare for it, then you're ready. If you don't prepare for it, you get it, then you're not going to make it. It's just the way it happens. And so every game you envision that.
Yes. And what is going through your mind as you're trying to make sure not to have that nervousness when you're about to make a potential game-winning kick? You're on the road. The stadium is going crazy, loud as anything. Walk us through What exactly is happening? I mean, do you have tunnel vision where you can't hear people, or what is that like?
Well, it does take practice, and any sports psychologist will tell you you need to practice your visualization. Your routine becomes extremely important. Any golfer, any baseball player, anybody that does a specialized sport or a position in a specialized sport, you have to be very well trained so that when it does come time for those pressure situations, your routine takes over and your muscle memory takes over and you're not thinking. So what I mean by not thinking is that you're out there thinking of one thing. And a lot of times I would say one of these two things. Number one, watch the ball, right? If you're a baseball player, if you're a kicker, if you're a tennis player, if you're a golfer, number one, watch the ball, right? I mean, because if you're not watching the ball, you have no way of hitting it, right?
That's
So,
right.
I mean, you're screwed. Number two, go slow. So during the time that I'm out there getting ready to kick a field goal, I'm visualizing the field goal before I ever kick it. Conditions have already been processed. The field conditions have been processed. I've already gone through the snap, hold, the kick in my mind, 3 or 4 times, a dozen times, whatever, how long it takes me to get to that play. But thirdly, what I make sure is that when you go slow, it's because in high pressure situations, you find yourself overreacting and being too fast. You're really tight. I equate it to when you're in your car, you're on ice, you hit the brakes, you start sliding, and the car that's in front of you, you're sliding at. And your heart rate, everything's tightening up, and you can't breathe, right? That's what being over anxious. And if you don't learn how to breathe and tell yourself to go slow, then if you have to react at the end of that situation, you're going to really blow up on the ball, and you won't hit it. So everything changes. So in my mind, that's really what I was going through, is telling myself to watch the ball go slow and visualizing that kick and seeing it good before I ever kick it. So basically, the kick's already good before I ever go out there.
And what was more enjoyable then, kicking a game winner on the road to silence the crowd, or at home and have the euphoria go with the home crowd?
What's funny about that? People say that, playing at home, when I was away playing at another person's stadium and I'm kicking a game winner, it was so loud, you couldn't hear anything. It was just loud, right? And I had that ability just to, it's loud, but all right, so what? Everybody's feeling it. That didn't ever intimidate me. What intimidated me was when I was at home and somebody from the other team was somebody I knew, maybe they were on my team, and they're yelling because it's quiet at home. Nobody's hollering at me, and I can hear the other team going, "Stover! Hey, Stover! Miss it!" Or they're saying something about me,
Yes.
That's when it's intimidating because people say, "Oh, you can't hear him." Yes, you can. The guy in a batter's box, he can hear you. Just as he had the ability to tune you out, right? So, and I always laugh. I don't hear anything. Yeah, you do. It's just can you not really take it in and comprehend it? That's the issue.
Yeah. Was there a particular guy that would talk trash more than anybody else that you had to play against?
Well, there were some old teammates that did. Now, I have to tell you, during the course of practice, in order for me to get geeked up and not just go through the motions of practice, I would always tell my defense to see if they can get me to miss, and I didn't care what that took, Tony Saragusa getting right in front of me and pulling his pants down, literally.
That's not an image I think anybody wants to visualize right now, Matt.
It's not. And everybody was dying laughing, including my holder, and I hit the field goal. And he looked at me like, "Wow, you are good." Or you have somebody just heckling you during practice. And the reason for that is because I needed to keep my mental focus during practice. I never thought practice was just practice. I wanted to make sure that I prepared myself fully so that when I step out on the field on Sunday or Monday night or whenever it was, that I was ready. There was no doubt that I did everything I could to get ready. So, and that's really a great way to overcome that fear and anxiety, is knowing, stepping on the field, you own it. No matter what happens here, good or bad, I've done everything I could. There's no regret in that. You just had a bad play if you missed it. So that's how I conducted it. So, preparing myself mentally was always a struggle. If you ask me what I don't miss about the NFL, that is gearing myself up every single game and going through the whole process to get ready for the game winner.
Yeah, so was that a grind?
That, for me, it was. Certain guys it's not, but I would say that even then it's a grind. All you have to do is miss a couple of them, and I've done. I missed a few, and it just wears on you, because you know exactly what that feels like, and it's not fun. Even though there's a greater, purpose for it, it still hurts because you let your team down.
Yeah, and another aspect of your career is also that not only are you kicking field goals, but you're also kicking off. And there's always this mantra that everybody talks about that, you can never, as a kick returner, you can never get tackled by the kicker. That's the one cardinal sin. So did you take pride on making sure that you had opportunity to make a tackle if a guy did break it open like that?
Absolutely. And I made quite a few tackles. I was a football player growing all the way up, meaning I was a running back, defensive back, a wide receiver. So I knew the game. I knew angles. I knew how to, hit somebody. Mind you, I had Toys R Us pads on, so I really didn't want to, hit anybody very hard. I didn't even have a mouthpiece in, much less a shoulder pads. They were called the Wilson Aggressor 2s that I had since 1990. I mean, it was bad. The helmet barely had a chin strap on it. So, at the end of the day, I knew that I was part of the game, part of the play. My number one job was to make sure that they didn't score. So my philosophy was get down the play, get down the field enough to where they can't score. And so slow down the returner, find themselves in a position where you're either making the tackle or you're slowing them down so that your other teammates can do it. So, for instance, if an offensive lineman was leading the returner and I had to go through the offensive lineman in order to get to the returner, there's no way that was going to happen, right? I'm 180 pounds. He's 300 running full steam. What am I going to do with that, right? So my job was to at least slow down the returner. So the way I did that was by getting a penalty and getting fined, but I took the offensive lineman out by chop blocking and taking his legs completely out, right? And it slowed down the returner just enough to where our safeties could get to him and make the tackle. Let me tell you, I came over the sideline after I did that 2 times, and the coaches looked at me like, "What a football play, Stover! That was outstanding. That was great work," because they knew I couldn't have done anything. I could have just tried to hit the offensive lineman high and just let him toss me, right? And then he wouldn't have even break a broken stride on me. Instead, I actually took him out. So that's how you do it. You take out the giant in front of the army, and then you can kill the rest of the army.
But how sore were you after that? Were you sore for days?
Nah, it was all right. It was all right. Depends on how hard I got hit, but yeah, there was always that case where if you get hit. Now, Randall L. one time talked junk to me right before the game when he was with the Steelers, and we were at home, and he was talking a bunch of junk, and he was going to take one back on me, and I'm sitting there going, okay, whatever. I tackled him twice in that game. And he looked at me like, he was cussing at me, calling me, kicker and, that kind of stuff. I just loved it. It was so funny.
That's a moment of pride for sure right there.
Yeah. I got up and talked a little smack on the second one, saying, I told you weren't going to score.
Now, what about you talking smack? Did you ever talk smack, like after kicking a field goal and having the opportunity to say something to the opposing team?
Well, typically what I would do, starting in 1993, really, 4, I understood that, this career wasn't about myself. I knew that calling was greater than me. It wasn't about me. So if I made a field goal, I would point up, and that's pretty easy to do. But then what I knew would be even a greater testimony is if I pointed up after I missed. And to me, that spoke more volume than anything that I could have done because, God gets glory there too. There's a reason for this. I mean, yeah, does he really care about a made or missed field goal? I believe he does, right? I think he gives us free will, and I think we go out there and perform. But I do think that, yeah, he cares, and you can glorify him with it. So one of the greatest moments but hardest moments in my life is my last game I ever played, and the last field goal I ever kicked was a missed field goal in Super Bowl 44 when I was with the Indianapolis Colts, and I missed a 51-yard field goal. And Jim Nance and Phil Simms were the commentators for that game, and I had missed the field goal, and I pointed up, and Jim Nance said, moments later, Matt's not saying that he thought he made that field goal. Matt's a godly man, and he's pointing up because, he's giving thanks. And that's in front of 120 million people, watching this game. And if you want to know how I ended my career and why I ended it, and after that season, was because it was never about me. It was all about him. And I had to understand that I had no idea that Jim Nance said that. I'm on the field, right? I'm on the bench after I miss it, upset that I missed the field goal, perfect opportunity for greatness, not for my own sake, but for my team, helping us win. Drew Brees takes the ball after that missed field goal and scores. The next play, we get the ball. The next series, Peyton Manning throws a pick six. Game over.
I remember.
Right? And they had just gotten an onside kick before all that, so they scored 3 times. Boom, boom, boom. Game was over. And I'm over there distraught and broken and thinking, oh, man, what a way. Come on. Lord, this isn't what I envisioned. This is probably my last game I ever going to play. And I'm walking off the field, and, I'm pretty much grieving, just beat up a little bit. And I get my phone, and I open it up, and I have 53 messages from all of my pals and my people. Stover, you wouldn't believe. Jim Nance said, blah, 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 blah. And I went, oh. And then I began to weep. It was, oh, gosh. It was never about me. And here I was all caught up in my own world and my own pain and the embarrassment of missing a 51-yard field goal and helping us lose the game, and it was never about me. It was always about him and how I pointed up after I missed that field goal.
And did that give you the peace to be able to walk away when you did?
That gave me closure. That gave me, okay, God, you wanted me to be on this team. Leaving the Ravens when I did in 2008, just helped them get to the AC Championship, kick a game winner against the Titans. They didn't sign me back. I go to the Colts week 5. Adam Vinatieri doesn't even come back because I'm kicking so well. And then I get to the Super Bowl to glorify you. And to be able to say that is what it was all about. So I could walk away and say, game over. And there was no regrets. Was that a regretful play? Well, sure. I mean, in the context of your team and losing the game, sure, but not in a context of really what my true purpose was. And that's when I could walk away.
It's obviously bigger than just being out there kicking, that's for sure. Now,
it really is.
Now, you were able to win a Super Bowl with the Ravens in Super Bowl 35. What was that experience like, actually getting to hoist that trophy up and put on a Super Bowl ring?
That was a culmination of 10 years of pain and struggle, moving from Cleveland to Baltimore. And
yes, and that's a whole nother topic, too, that you were part of the Cleveland Browns team that Art Modell moves basically in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and it was just so hard. It was just, everything. I had 2 little babies and just moving to, transition, blah, blah, blah. Don't feel sorry for me, right? But it's just, I just, at that point, it was like, and then the fact that this team had an okay offense, middle of the pack offense, the number 1 defense, I still think of all times, special teams that managed field position. And here I was called at that time, not knowing it, that I was going to win games just because we kicked field goals. In fact, our defense on third down many a times told the offense, just kick the field goal. Don't even worry about it. So, don't turn the ball over. Whatever you do, just get the 3. We got it. You're in Super Bowl 35 and your defense says right before the game starts, the defense says to the offense, all we need is 10. That's all we need. Just get 10 and we'll win. I'm sitting there going, 7 plus 3 is 10, and I'm part of that 10.
You've got to perform.
Yeah, I'm part of that. Is that going to be a game winner? Holy crud. So, of course, I embraced it. And right before halftime, I kicked a 47-yarder with 1:50 left to go up by 10. And, we beat them 34-7. The 7 they got was a return kickoff. One of the 3 I ever had. I only had 3 return kickoffs on me. So, out of about 1,700.
Wow, 1,700. That's amazing.
Yeah, had a ton. Had a lot, yeah. So, looking back, that was, kicking in the Super Bowls on that stage was an absolute privilege. The game, believe it or not, for the player is hard, emotionally draining. It's not just a game for us. It's a job.
What do you mean by that in terms of just emotionally draining?
Well, people think, you just play football. How much fun would that be? You don't realize that, it's pressure field. Yes, we're getting paid for it and everything, but you don't want to be the guy that lets your team down. You want to do everything you can to help us win. And this opportunity before you is great. It really is. And the amount of work and everything that has to go well for you to get to that game is incredible. So when somebody like the Buffalo Bills gets there 4 times and loses all 4, I'm still saying to you, oh my gosh, do you realize how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl? And they got the 4 of them in a row? That's unbelievable.
Oh, it's insane. Yes.
That didn't happen. At the end of the thing, I'm content, with losing, but I'm also, it hurt. But to win was that, hey, the Joe Namath, we did it. That is how you feel. Yeah. We did it. Oh my gosh, we actually won.
Yeah. Did it take a few days before it to sink in that you'd actually won a Super Bowl?
No. It's right then.
Okay.
You're on that field, and you see Ovechkin after he wins the championship this past year, and you see joy.
Yes.
Right? That's sincere. That is as sincere as it gets, man. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, as we're wrapping up here, Matt, one of the things that I also focus on is words of wisdom, and you've shared a lot because you've obviously with your faith and just your journey. But are there any particular phrases, quotes, or mottos or other Bible verses that have meant a lot to you in your life that you would like to share?
When I think about that God loves me no matter what, I think that God's grace is sufficient. And I mean that in a way that no matter what you've done, no matter what you think you are, who you think you are, God loves you so much, and his grace is sufficient to forgive all of it. That gives me freedom. It gives me freedom to fail. It gives me freedom to love. It gives me freedom to forgive. I think that's empowering. So many of us hold on to our past. We all think that, we could never, God could never love me, or nobody ever loves me. I think that is a critical piece, and who you are, because it's who loves you, and who loved you first, that really matters to me. And so from there, I try to do the same for those who I love and who love me. I try to exemplify that same type of love in return. By far not perfect with it, but that's what I try to model by. So I think from everything from that is the foundation, and then how I conduct myself out in my community with the Players Philanthropy Fund, my purpose behind that when I speak or when I mentor, that's what it's about.
Well said, sir. Matt, I can't thank you enough for joining me here on the podcast. I greatly appreciate your time and definitely looking forward to seeing what the future holds for the Players Philanthropy Fund and all the great things you're going to be continuing to do. So thank you.